Hi everyone. So after I was looking at the data that we were given, some of the KPIs that I noticed that changed within the last 10 years, obviously we know that 2020 was a big year for our industry because of the pandemic and COVID-19. So all of the KPIs did drop in 2020. Some of the ones that stuck out to me was the external KPI of demand growth in 2020 at negative 36.2%. That was a huge drop off from 2019. So that was a big one to look at. For the internal KPI, the one that stuck out to me was probably ADR. Since 2014, it has increased from $115.73 to $159.64, which obviously has spiked up even past the pandemic. So we're even further along than we were before. And that also, increased RevPAR as well, since RevPAR is a combination of ADR and occupancy. So I just thought that one was important to talk about because it had, like I said, spiked up even more, even after the pandemic from where we were at originally. When looking at the year-over-year measurements, the outlooks for 2024 did not look great, so I was kind of looking at 2023 compared to 2024. All of the KPIs seem to be outlook to decrease except for supply, which I thought was very interesting because supply is one of the more fixed things in our, not completely fixed, but it's one of the things that doesn't change as much in our industry because people don't, add on hotel rooms as much. Usually what you have to work with is what you have to work with. So I thought it was interesting that was the only one that seemed to increase, even if it wasn't by a lot. I guess, just more hotels are going to be built and stuff like that. But everything else seemed to decrease since 2023, and I think that could be because after the pandemic, people want to get back out there and travel and do all these things, but it was only going to go, so high before it starts to kind of stagger out again and kind of get back to a more neutral spot. So that would be my guess for that. And some of the reasons for the inclines and the increases and declines of the performance metrics within the last 10 years, obviously the pandemic, right? That was a huge one. But speaking off of that, after the pandemic, we had to rebuild our industry, had to get our customers to get excited to get back out there and our guests. But another big one is the employee turnover rates. I know we've talked about it in a lot of different classes throughout, the program here at school. But I feel like one of the things that we constantly keep talking about is that, people just don't want to work as much anymore, which puts us in a good spot, as the future hospitality leaders out there because, since we're the ones that want to work, we should be okay, right? But when you don't have employees who know the property, who know the building, who know what they're doing, it can be hard to keep some of those KPIs up because you might just be working with a newer team, every so often. And I kind of touched on this a little bit more, but for forecasting for 2024, I don't see it getting super positive. I don't see it getting awful. I think it's going to be pretty similar to 2023 based on those numbers. Like I said, I think it's going to kind of stagger out a little bit and get back to, about where we were last year, post-pandemic. But I also think another thing is after the pandemic, people, realized the work-life balance that needed to happen. So that's why I think it's higher than what it was before because we had the pandemic, people were at home, people knew how important their families were, kind of got back a sense of that balance. And I think that that's something that's going to stick even post-pandemic. So I know for my family, I was just talking about this with my parents, but my parents were talking about how other things are important to them now post-pandemic. They're both teachers, so they make sure that, when they can take advantage of in-service days working from home, right, they're making sure to do something that'll be better for them and our family and things along those lines. So